So, Jared, I want to welcome you to the summit. The reason I thought it would be great for us to hop on a call is because I know you are all about mission and movement motivating your public speaking. When we had our first conversation a few weeks ago, it was really about the mission, and we both have kind of the same mission in mind, which is to help speakers. But even with your topic, you talk about the bigger picture and the bigger mission. So I thought it would be great to hop on and to have you explain how someone can start a movement or a mission driven speaking career that will allow other people to hop on board and support them without them having to beg, hey, I got this thing, can you come support me? But if they buy into the mission, they usually will support you without you asking. So give us a little bit of your background. Tell us about your origin story. You know, every superhero has an origin story. So let's
Yes,
hear it.
sir. Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate that. But also, I think the reason I found this out, you know how we find things out by accident, by just trial and error when it comes to business. I think I figured this movement thing out because I was a shy kid that never really wanted the story to be about him. So even when I was a kid and speakers came to my school, it would make me cringe. Like I couldn't imagine being that person on the stage. Public speaking was my biggest fear. Didn't even really believe in motivation. I thought if you had to be motivated to do something, then you're always going to have to be motivated to do something and it's going to be a trap. And so I dismissed speakers that came to my school. But there was this one guy, and I'll never forget it. He stood up on that stage and he kind of bombed. It wasn't that great. He was talking about things that were outdated, magazines and MTV and stuff like that. But my generation grew up with cell phones and social media, so we never even had a magazine. But he said something that stood out to me. He asked a question. He asked if anybody thought that this program was boring or unrelatable, and everybody raised their hands, And I was like, "Ooh, that was bad." But he was like, "Good. Then I want you to come up to me afterwards and tell me how to fix it." And so he asked for real time feedback and he gave the audience a voice. And even as a shy kid, I felt like I needed to say something. So afterwards, I went up and I asked him, you know, if I could tell my story. And he listened to me. And at the time, I was dealing with a friend of mine that lost her life to suicide. And our town was dealing with an epidemic. I mean, we had 12 students in one school year attempt to take their life. 12. It was 2011. My town was going through a mental health crisis, and nobody was really speaking up about it. Even the speaker that was at our school to talk about mental health didn't know about this. I mean, it just was something that was going unspoken. So I gave it a voice, and I told him how I was feeling, how I was dealing with it, and I told him, how cool would it be if you gave students an opportunity to tell their stories for themselves? And it kind of sparked an idea. And so he was like, okay, well, there's this Be the Difference Day in my town that was going on. And he called me and he was like, hey, do you want to come tell your story at this event that I'm speaking at? And so I started to kind of speak with him here and there when he came in my town. He was contracted to come in and out. And I got better at speaking and telling my story. And I realized I didn't really have a script or anything. I was just telling people how I felt and I was just telling the truth. But yet afterwards, kids were lining up to tell me their truth. They were telling me that, seeing me up on stage as the shy kid was giving them courage and confidence and inspiring them to tell their stories, even if they were shy kids. And that's how they felt. And that's where it kind of just clicked for me. It was just like, well, courage and confidence, they can be exchanged and they can be borrowed. If I can just get up on stage and tell my truth, no matter how scary it is, then maybe just one person, this audience, has the courage and confidence to tell theirs now, and it becomes a chain reaction of courage and confidence. And then the next thing you know, we're all telling the truth. And that's where we got help. We started to get resources, connect people to other people because they're telling the truth. Now they feel courage. They feel courageous and confident enough to do something about it, to take action. And I was just seeing the repercussions of me telling the truth, right? The outcome. And it was amazing and it felt great. And it was better than the fear, by hiding behind the fear, sitting in the back of the class, suffering in silence. I was like, I want every kid to have this feeling right here. And so that's what sent me on my mission. And my mission was never really about me. It was about them. It was about giving them a voice, giving them the opportunity that I was given. And so I think that's how the movement started, was me just being a student and then remaining a student in one way, shape, or form in every single school that I go. That's literally a part of my intro. I tell them, I think a great leader, speaker, teacher has to remember what it's like to be a student and remain a student. So today I'm not here to teach and preach. I'm here to listen and learn from you. And that's what makes this tour special to me.
No, that's a big deal. What's the old saying? The truth shall set you free.
Yep,
It,
exactly.
it's like you've lived that, where by you not trying to be someone else, but first the guy asking from the stage for the truth, right?
Yep,
So his asking for honest feedback allowed you to be honest, right?
exactly.
And your being honest was a great demonstration to the other kids that they could be honest, right? And it's exactly what you said. I think that's really important nowadays when everybody may see something that's working and then they try to copy it, right? I remember this guy, Alex Hormozy, was making certain types of reels. So then next thing you know, anybody who had anything to do with business, all of their Instagram photos look just like his with the letters and it's
Yep.
like, oh, everybody just copies what they think works, but he didn't copy anybody. He did his own thing, right?
Right.
And that was his truth. And it didn't work so well for anyone else because the first thing they say is, what? You're just copying Alex, right?
Exactly.
So I think that that's really important, man. Finding your own voice and being comfortable to share it, even if only one person was listening. That's
Right.
that's a big deal. So tell me a little bit how you inspire these mission-driven audiences when you go to these schools.
Yeah, so first I'm going to tell my truth. I think that respect means to admire somebody for their qualities, characteristics, for their achievements, for who they are. And so I just keep that definition of respect in mind before I get on every stage because it's still scary as a shy kid on the inside. I look at the stage and I'm scared to get up there and tell my truth. But the reality is, this crowd's going to look at me like a stranger until I do. And if there's any uncertainty about me, then there's going to be fear. And that's why I'm so scared. I tell speakers all the time, I'm coaching them like, go into the audience before the presentation starts, go shake some hands, go talk to some people. I purposely look out at the crowd and see which students that I think are going to give me a hard time. They're the ones that are too cool for school, already laughing, joking. I go make friends with them. I go tell them there might be a moment in the presentation where I need to call on them. Can I count on you? And we build a relationship. I take away uncertainty in the audience so when I get up on stage, I'm able to fully be myself and be authentic, right? And then once I'm authentic, real recognizes real. So the more that I am myself, the more comfortable you see the audience get because I'm not a stranger anymore. I'm not a threat anymore. They start to feel safe. And my whole goal for the whole presentation is to get them to the point of feeling safe enough that they feel like they could approach me afterwards. And then the kids that approach me, I take them into a leadership breakout workshop after that. And that's where we really go deeper than we do in the presentation so we can figure out what challenges they're facing at home and at school. And then we do activities to come up with solutions to those challenges. So that's how I've done it. It's just a rinse and repeat process that I've figured out through trial and error, how to make people feel safe enough to tell the truth.
So are the event planners bringing you in? You mentioned a breakout session. Are they
Mm-hmm.
bringing you in for a whole day, or is it just a hour keynote? How does that normally work?
Yes, sir. So it's usually a whole day, even if they don't book me for the whole day, just because I'm not going to leave a student broken down. If a student's ready to tell their truth and they need some counseling for the day, I'll stay extra hours to talk to students. I mean, that's what I went to school for. My background's in psychology, in counseling, family dynamics, all of that. So I went and got a degree so that way I could be someone that could stay afterwards and actually help the counselors. I've told you this before, I'm a professional problem solver. So when school started to tell me that the issue with my program was that the counselor had too much work to do afterwards because they'd have 50 or 60 kids waiting at their door afterwards to tell their truth and they couldn't facilitate that, I was like, oh, I got to stay and facilitate that. And I actually have to be, knowledgeable enough to do the correct job and do it the right way so I don't leave people more hurt than I help them, right? And so, yeah, I'm there all day, man. And the full culture shift package is a keynote, it's a leadership breakout. And then we take the ideas from those students to a staff breakout and we develop them into movements that we could actually do. And then the full package is with a community night on the end of that, where we'll present those ideas to the parents and we get community buy-in so that way we can raise funds. and we usually call nonprofits and we invite them out to come set up booths, talk about their resources, because most of the time it's just a connect problem. There's answers and resources within communities. They just don't know each other. They haven't ever worked with the school or ever thought to work with the school, but they care about the youth. It's really just a professional way of connecting dots and getting the right people in each other's contacts so that way great things can happen. Planting seeds, man. That's what I'm doing.
No, that's huge. Like I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it while you're going through that. I'm like, wait a minute. You didn't just say I want to share my story. You went and got the extra education necessary in order to do it legally with no liability and all the other things. Because I talk with a lot of speakers who've overcome traumatic experiences in their lives, but sometimes they're not hired to go on stages because they don't have the actual education credentials, right? And it introduces a level of liability to the business. So they're like, oh, yeah, we would love to have you come, but you can't talk about this because you're not certified in this area. You don't have this level of education. We respect what you've been through, but we need it documented because we don't want to get sued if something happens. Was that the motivation behind you going further with your education?
It never happened in real life, meaning I've never been asked if I have a degree or a certification by a school. But in my heart, man, like just knowing that I'm giving the right answers gives me peace so I can sleep at night. And hearing speakers that are honestly, quite honestly, some of them are bigger than me and from the stage saying things that have been clinically disproven hurts my soul. So because there's things that I was saying 5-6 years ago that we know now that's not the answer. And so I have to change my speech. You have to grow and you always have to be in with the new scholarly research. And so when I see people from huge stages saying the wrong things that are leading people to more hurt or just cycles of really like victim mindset, stuff like that, me against the world, proving people wrong, trying to kill people with success. There's no forgiveness in their message. There's no detachment from negative emotions. So I see them just using anger to get rich. I'm like, that hurts my soul. And I didn't want to become another speaker that was spewing false information, leaving people with more pain to deal with down the road.
No, I think that's huge. And because I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of, your haters should be your motivators and all this old negative crap. It's like, dude, how can you really, like, energy is you can translate it to other people, right? Transferable. And it's like, dude, how can you really go forward with this negative energy all the time? Like, come on, man. Like the world already has enough of that. You're telling me the negative things are what's going to make you positive? Get out of here,
In our industry, man, like in the speaking industry, I would say it's a good 50-50 at least. And that's just me being generous, but 50-50, meaning 50% of the people are there to be successful, to get revenge from their past, to the people in their past, the people that said they couldn't do this. It's all about proving people wrong. And I'm trying to get people, it's more about proving yourself right to yourself. It's not about proving other people wrong. It's the wrong reasons. And it's stressful that way. And stress causes inflammation. Inflammation is the beginning of all disease ever. So you see these people worried, sick, man. They're working themselves sick and they're always, angry. And anger is just a secondary emotion. So I know that they're not mad. They're sad and they just don't want to show it because they never forgave that person. They've been holding on to that for 15 years and they suppress those emotions. Suppressed emotions always becomes depression. And these people are just depressed and they're sad. And then they help somebody and it makes them feel better for the moment because they feel noble. And so they just keep helping, but they're really helping everybody else because they desperately need and want help for themselves. And it's love everybody else because they want and need love for themselves. It's like, it is trauma bonding. That is the definition of trauma bonding. They're just trauma bonding with the audiences. And the way that I can speak on this clearly is because I was doing that in the beginning of my career. When I was 15, 16 years old and I lost a friend to suicide, bro, I blamed myself. I was like, I could have, would have, should have been a better friend. And I was going around the country speaking to kids my age, just trauma bonding with them and their traumatic experiences. I had no real answers for them. I wasn't telling them anything that they could do to be healed. I was just telling them that they're not alone. And that helps you feel better for the moment. And people praise people all the time for telling the truth. You're not alone. I get it. But what do we do now? And now we're both down in the hole together. Who's going to get out? And then what a lot of these people do is they help other people up out of the hole. And then what happens is now you got to rely on somebody else to come get you out of the hole. And that's just the negative cycle of being in a trauma bonded relationship. I think you got to learn how to get yourself up out of the hole first, turn around and pull people up.
So if a speaker is listening to this, because that's our audience, if they're listening to this and they identify with what you were just talking about, what should they do as a professional? What should they do?
You got to go heal first. I mean, if you're going to go around the world and talk to people about healing from your past, because that's what most speakers do, no matter what you're speaking about, bro, even if you go listen to Eric Thomas, he's talking about healing. I never forget the day that I first sat down and got to watch Eric in person. He said something that stood out to me in the first 5 minutes. He said, my career took off when I forgave my father. And as a counselor, I was like, absolutely, because negative emotions weigh you down. As soon as he forgave his father, he was able to actually take off. And so that's always been my thing with every speaker that comes and talks to me or asks me for advice. When they're talking about their problems, they're talking about their pain that they're trying to repurpose, I can tell by the way that they talk about it, by their body language, that they're not healed. And if they're not healed, I'm not going to put them on stage. I'm not going to tell them to start reaching out and getting all these leads and start getting on stage, because I know what that leads to. It leads to a mental breakdown in 4 or 5 years when you help everybody else with strings attached and nobody came to help you and you're mad, sad, bitter at the world. I mean, that's just what happens. You're going to have to help yourself first. Otherwise, you're a bunch of halfway healed people helping other people halfway heal. That's the definition of trauma bonding. So you don't want to make things worse, right? So you got to heal first, no matter what it is. No matter what it is that you're talking about, you have to do the work first, so that way we'll believe you. I have a saying that action is evidence that you have what it takes to be the person that you say you are, or the person that you want to be. So if you don't take any action, then you don't have any evidence. You won't believe in you. And if you don't really believe in what you're selling, then neither will the people. That's why they don't get booked, bro. At the end of the day, like, really, they don't get booked because they actually don't believe in their product or service, because they haven't actually done the work that they're telling people to do.
Wow, that's good. I like that. When I think about, there's 2 things. The first one is, most of the people that we're angry with inside don't know.
They don't know.
They have no clue. So listen, 20 years of saying somebody who's like, I didn't even know, dude, I didn't even mean that when I said that. Like, I wasn't talking about you, and then you've been, I was so Ron, and I was that, and you got all this rage, and Ron is like, dude, I wasn't even talking about you. I was just making an example. So,
and you know what they were probably doing? Just to be honest, they were probably suppressing and projecting their own emotions onto you. So it had nothing to do with you. It's about how they felt about themselves on the inside, and they projected it onto you. Because we've been doing this forever. So somebody's like, hey, are you sad? And you're like, I'm not sad, you're sad. I'm not mad, you're mad. You know, like, if you're being unfaithful, then you're going to accuse somebody else of being unfaithful. If you're lying to everybody, you think everybody's lying to you. It's suppression and projection. We have 2 parts of our personality. We have the public image, the persona that everybody's created. And a lot of people have multiples of those. They're based on lies. They're what you think is acceptable to everybody else. But you also have the other side of you that's the shadow, the part that you think is not acceptable, that you show no one. But what you do with the shadow is you project it onto other people. And you do this subconsciously, so you're not really consciously thinking about it. So you have to be careful. Because whatever you see in somebody else that you don't like, just know you are only able to recognize that because you have it within yourself. And as human beings, we are all capable of what every other human being is capable in one way, shape, or form, even if it's in a visionary sense, like in our minds. You know, the Bible says, like, as a man in his heart, you know, as he is, what's in his heart comes out his mouth. Like, you are what you think you are. So if you see something in somebody else that you don't like, turn that mirror around and look at yourself for a second and make sure that it's not you projecting it onto that person, especially if we're a stranger.
No, I think that's, you know, one of my mentors used to say, you know, glass is reflective and transparent, right? You can see through it, but you also put the reflection back on it from the right angle. So it doesn't even have to be a mirror, because you can't see through a mirror, but the glass, you can see yourself and see through it. I think that that's interesting. The second thing that you mentioned that stood out to me was that the person needs to do the work themselves, and it prevents them from getting booked, right? And it prevents them from doing, and I never thought about that because that's not my world, right? We call it call reluctance when someone doesn't want to make the pitch or make the phone call to get on stage. And I, no one had ever unraveled it that way, where I said, oh, well, wait a minute. The reason why they don't want to make the call or send the pitch to get on the podcast to talk about this is maybe they don't believe.
They have imposter syndrome. Yeah. It's deeper than that. It's cognitive dissonance. They're holding contradictory beliefs about themselves in their mind at the same time. So they both believe that they are this and that they aren't this, because they've been both before. And you'd have to let go of the old you to become the new you. You can't be both at the same time. And people do try. It's like when you ask somebody if they're fine when they're clearly not fine, and they say that they're fine, they're just tired or whatever. They make an excuse because their current public persona cannot be not okay. They have to be tough, because if they're a public speaker and there's somebody speaking on mental health, they feel like they can't have problems with their mental health. You see, they're not allowed to be not okay, because I'm someone who speaks on this subject. Me, I have to allow myself to be not okay a lot. I have to be able to tell my wife, hey, I'm not okay today. I'm really, really sad. I'm able to be sad because I accept that I'm sad today. But some people that are in these positions, professional positions, feel like they are coaches and teachers and life coaches and stuff like that, feel like all of a sudden because they have the title, they cannot have problems. But everyone has problems, you see, and that causes cognitive dissonance because your brain's like, hey, we're not okay, and the only way that we can get help is if we admit that we're not okay, but you keep telling everybody that we're fine. By definition, you're a liar because you're not who you say you are, and lies multiply. Then you become a different person around every group of people you're around, different person around different friend groups, different person on social media than you are in real life. How many versions of you are there? Do you know the true you? Do you have a relationship with that person? Right? A lot of people that I mentor and coach, they absolutely do not, so much to the point that they've actually put their identity in a lie. They believe that they're more fine than they're not okay. And they're clearly, to everybody else, not okay. And their brain is quite literally screaming at them to tell the truth. This is what anxiety is, man. If stranger equals danger and you don't know yourself, that means that you're a threat to you. You see what I'm saying? Like, lies are a threat to the truth. So to your brain, which its one job is to keep homeostasis and balance and keep you living in your true identity, basically, is going to tell you to kill the lies. Get rid of the lies. Get rid of the lies. But if you put your lie or your identity in a lie, then that thought comes across as get rid of yourself. And it doesn't always end in a suicidal thought or ideation, but it ends in isolation. I can tell you that much. It ends in not taking that phone call because you feel like that's not who you are, right? It ends with you saying, I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the problem. You may cause a problem, but you are not the problem by definition, because I can try to help you, but if you don't help you, you're still helpless. So at the end of the day, you're the only solution to your problems. So by that definition, bro, you cannot be the problem. You can cause a problem and you can accept that and forgive yourself for it, but you're not the problem. And I think that that's what happens to a lot of speakers. They get in their head, they have cognitive dissonance, they're holding contradictory beliefs about themselves, they have, imposter syndrome, and they don't get on that phone. And if they ever do, they don't truly believe in it. They don't think that people can see through that, but people can feel through that. And this goes for even if you have somebody calling on your behalf. Does that person truly believe in you? And it's still going to come back to you. Do you believe in you enough to get your sales staff to believe in you? It's always going to come back to your belief in yourself. Always.
No, I mean, it goes back to our original conversation today when you said someone on stage told the truth and they asked for the truth. So it goes back to that being honest and being truthful with yourself first. I was talking to I call him my little brother, and he had a business question, and I just asked him very clearly, hey, what are you using to solve this? He's like, oh, yeah, I already got that. I got that taken care of. As we continue to talk, I'm like, well, if you have this, you wouldn't have this problem. He's like, well, I got it, but I don't use it. And I'm like, dude, All I ask is, I can't help you if you tell me you already solved the problem, right? So by us not telling the truth, by him not telling me the truth fully, I wasn't able to give him the answer that he wanted. And if I would have just left it there, he still wouldn't have his problem solved. But because I went 3 steps deeper, he said, "Oh yeah, I got it, but I never use it, so that's why I didn't know what you were talking about." Like, dude, just tell me that. Like, so I think about all the times we've cut ourselves off from help or from advice or direction because on the outside we said, "Oh, I got it together," because we didn't want to appear as if we didn't have it together. So I think a lot of speakers deal with that, and I I think
They've been through a lot.
this is very fair, man, but it just triggered so many thoughts, the
Yeah.
conversation. So I don't want to spill the stage. I I think a lot of times this happens. They think that they have to be perfect, right? So one of the things that my team will tell you, look, I always say we may be the biggest, or I may have this number of experience, but I'd never say I'm the best, right? Because I know I still got room for improvement, right? And to be honest that way allows me to get rid of imposter syndrome. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Someone said something to me that I thought was really cool. They said, imposter syndrome is a symptom of the competent. And I said, oh, wait a minute, what does that mean? He says, well, the fool thinks he already has it all together. So he doesn't have the feeling that he still has more to go.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how do you overcome that? And they said, just be honest about where you are. Because there's somebody who's further behind that's willing to follow you up to where you are. You don't need to be like the example that they used really quickly was 10 people in the Olympics that run the 100-meter race. Usain Bolt may be the fastest person in the world, but the guy who came in 10th place is still the 10th fastest human on earth. And everybody who's not 10th or running in that race can learn from him to get better, right? But for him to say, well, no, I can't coach track because I didn't win like Usain Bolt. You don't need to be Usain Bolt. Just lead the people who are willing to follow you. And that's how I learned to get over the imposter syndrome. Admit where I'm at. And then asking people to say, hey, look, if you aren't here yet, I could probably help you. Because that killed the imposter syndrome. I no longer had to act like I was somebody else. I've said to be like, look, here's where I'm at. Tell the truth like you suggested. And then invite people to follow. So mentioning that, let's talk about how to start a movement. Because we can definitely say it starts with being honest with yourself, right? And then what happens after that?
Yeah, you got to be honest with yourself. You have to take the action so that way you actually have an action plan to give to the next person. If we're talking about passing something on, that's what a movement's about. A movement is about momentum, not just holding the mic, but passing the mic. And so you have to practice the transitions. Like, how do you pass the mic so that way when somebody gets the mic, they feel safe enough to tell their story and continue the mission and the movement, right? A lot of people say, I'm telling the truth. I told my story. Now it's your turn. And still, you're going to have people out there that say, how, though? How do I do this? So I'm big on proof. I'm big on data. I'm big on logistics. I'm big on steps, like as small as steps as you could possibly take. I like to take. I like baby steps. I like the next thing. So when I go to a school, in order to create the maximum amount of momentum I can create before I leave, we do five events, 5 things, like 5 gigs, engagements I call them: the keynote, the leadership breakout, the staff, and then an after school meeting and a community night. So it's 5 things. And so I'm breaking down so many steps. There's a keynote for each one plus activities, bro. So the thing about creating a movement is you have to fill in the gaps for people. Don't expect people to figure things out. They need to know exactly what to do next. And a lot of speakers, they come in, 45 minutes, give a keynote, peace out, bro. They might talk to some people, they might take a picture, but just know that only shifts what we call the climate. In schools, organizations, and businesses, there's climate and there's culture. Climate is the attitude. It's easy to change. You're going to feel good about yourself that you got everybody happy and they want to take pictures and you thought that you made a lasting change. But just know that change only lasts about 2 hours after you left that building. Most of those kids, teachers, employees, they all went back to their regular job, their regular day-to-day behaviors, which is what we call the culture. The culture is the personality of that place, of that school, of that organization. It's been there way before most of the people that work there have been there. They're just following it blindly. Most people can't see it and they can't feel it. It's just there. And it's very hard to change. And it takes something that's consistent, persistent, and relentlessly done over time to change a personality. Like if I told you to change your attitude right now, you could take a couple deep breaths, you could change your attitude easy, right? But if I told you to change your personality, just talking from a psychological standpoint that would take you about 120 days of repeating the same habits to create new neural pathways that would create a new personality, the way you think, the way you act, the way you feel. You'd have to change all of that to change who you are. So it's the same for the organization as a whole. So if you keep that in mind when you're telling this story and you're creating this movement, like, great, you told the story, you changed the climate, but now you got to put in the long-term work, and you're going to have to really map that out, exactly what it looks like for that short amount of time that you're there. And then you're going to have to handhold these organizations. So we don't just do it that day. A week later, we're following up. A week later after that, we're following up. Like, we follow up with them for a really long time until they actually create the movement. And then most of the time when they create the movements, we come back out to the schools to celebrate that they did it, to reinforce the good decisions that they made, right, to make a change. So it's creating a movement is not something for people that don't want to take that much work. If they want to come in and get a check real quick and speak for 45 minutes and bounce, you don't need to create a movement. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but why would they want to? Like, I mean, what you're talking about, I'm sitting there like, yeah, everybody needs to be thinking about this because it's more consultative, I should say, right? It's not just let me move you. One of my favorite quotes is when Cicero spoke, men marveled. When Caesar spoke, men marched. And what you're talking about is, well, when you're a speaker, you got to be Caesar and Cicero. You got to go give them the motivation, but then bring them in the back and say, look, we got to go to war to change this thing. Right? Yeah. So, I think everybody should be trying to
talk. Are you willing to die for it, like Jesus, like Martin, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, are you going to go stand for what you say you believe in? And that's the big question, because there's two types of people in this world. I mean, we could take doctors as an example. There's people that prescribe medications to fix symptoms, and there's people that get to the root of the symptoms and heal people. I'm trying to be a healer, not a helper. Some people just want to help you through. I'm trying to heal.
Wow.
Wow.
No.
But dude, I'd like to tell you about this. You got a second about this?
Yeah, we got time, man.
My wife was actually healed from an autoimmune disease that she had for about 28 years. She's 31 going on 32 now, but we did what's called trauma-focused therapy. So for 7 hours, we sat down, which she had already been taking notes and stuff for months up to this point. So what she did months up to this point was she wrote down all of her traumatic experiences. She wrote down how she felt when she remembered those experiences. And then she wrote down the people that were involved, and she forgave them all. And she forgave herself. After she forgave herself, she wrote down the story that she told herself after this experience happened. And if it was a lie, she replaced it with the truth, right? And then we sat down for 7 hours, me and her and a friend of mine, another counselor friend of mine, and we went through all of this. And she verbally forgave them, but on a deeper spiritual level forgave them. And I mean, like, truly forgave and detached from the negative emotions, because now she believes the truth and not the lie, because she has the hindsight, right? A lot of people don't just take the time to reflect on their feelings and their traumatic experiences. They do everything they can not to think about them. And the thing is, if you really think about them, not only think about them, but face them, face your fears, then you won't be bitten anymore and you'll be healed, right? You won't be hurt anymore and you'll be healed from the situation. After the 7 hours, bro, my wife no longer had celiac. She had no longer had, ANA levels that were of an autoimmune disease. We went and did blood work. At 3 years now, she was told we wouldn't have another kid. We're told that our first kid was a miracle. She's been pregnant. She had another baby. He's 1 year old now. Like, her body just healed itself. And it's just something I learned in school. It's something even biblical, man. It's so old. It's like it's been there forever. It's the principles of deliverance. It's the principles of healing. It's negative emotions, when suppressed, they do physical harm to our body. They cause stress, they cause inflammation, it causes sickness, illness, and disease, period. So if you want to detach from these negative emotions, unfortunately, the only way is through forgiveness. I say unfortunately because it's really hard to forgive. And people have been through things in life that they're like, no way I'd ever forgive that person. My wife had been through a lot in her childhood, a lot of things that, you know, most normal people don't have to go through. Her childhood was very traumatic. Had a mother who was on drugs, and a mother that abused her physically and emotionally and everything else. And so she had to work on this, but when she faced it and she forgave, she was able to be healed. And so we adopted that into our program. So our leadership program, where we try to come up with solutions, we now do this little trauma-focused therapy session to get kids to detach from the negative emotions so that way they could see a future version of themselves to actually create a solution. Because for the longest time, they couldn't see the future because they were too clouded with negative emotions. That's why we say things like blind with anger. You know, people can be so sad that they don't see tomorrow. And so they have all these challenges and negative situations going on at home and at school, and you're asking them to fix them. They're like, they can't see tomorrow. And so for the longest time, it actually wasn't working in schools until I went back to school and learned about trauma-focused therapy, started to help kids remove negative emotions, and then all of a sudden they started to have ideas and visions of the future. And so that's why I bring that up, because that's another part of that healing process. Some of these speakers, they just can't even see the program to create it because they're so clouded by their own negative emotions because they haven't dealt with their traumatic childhood. And every time they talk about it, they feel it.
No, there's a subject called epigenetics, right? And I'm not a doctor. I don't tell you what on the internet, but I've watched this video of the guy who discovered this in the 70s. And everybody's heard of the placebo effect, meaning that they can give you a sugar pill and tell you that it's the cure to your headache. And if you believe it, your headache goes away. And I found that placebos is how they test if regular medicine works. That's how effective a placebo is. It's how did the medicine from the pharmaceutical company perform against the placebo. So if it outperforms the placebo, it usually gets approval or something like that, right? But they discovered something called the nocebo effect, where they took the same sugar pills and they gave them to everybody, and they told half of them you have a disease, half of them you don't, right? And they gave them this medicine, and the people didn't have the disease. But they started getting the symptoms just because they were told that they had. I said, holy smokes.
I can tell you, it goes even deeper than that. So if you could think yourself sick, then you could obviously think yourself better, right? But people don't believe in the positive. They don't believe that the positive is possible for them. But what you were going to say about epigenetics, bro, is if you have two twins and they're Siamese twins, they are identical twins. They have the same code, the same DNA. They're carbon copies of each other. But because they have different reactions to their reality and environment, they have the same parents, same house, same rules, but because they respond differently, their genetics will change over time, because it's not the traumatic experience that changes you, it's your reaction to it that changes you. And these identical twins will grow up to have different allergies, different sicknesses, different genes will turn on and turn off based on their responses to reality. And what happens is, imagine you are in a fire and then you survive, and it was traumatic and you never really dealt with it. You just suppressed it. You tried as hard as you can not to think about the fire. Now you're a person that's a little bit more standoffish. When there's a fire around, somebody's barbecuing outside, you go inside. You have fears and phobias now because you've evolved as a person to be someone who's scared of fire because you were in a fire. And then you have kids, and then those kids have kids. Those kids and your grandkids, they have the genetic code in them that was in a fire, but they were never in the fire. You know, so they may still have fears and phobias that they don't understand, and we will be victim of this up to 4 or 5 generations plus. Your ancestors have went through traumatic things that you have in your DNA that you actually still need to heal from. And the craziest part about that is you might have to forgive some people that never hurt you personally. You know what I'm saying? You may have to forgive somebody that hurt your great grandfather.
Yeah.
And you may not ever even know the story, but it's in your genes. So for some reason, you have these feelings, these hunches, these dreams that repeat to you. But we try as hard as we can not to think about it. We take the melatonin gummy, we go to bed anyways, and we suppress these crazy dreams and feelings and inclinations that we have. But in reality, it's our brain and our genes trying to get us to evolve and heal. So I tell people there's an exercise that you could do, and I think every speaker should do this. I try to do this before I go to schools because I try to get as much out of the way personally, emotionally as I can before I go, so that way it doesn't tap onto it. Because when you leave an event, you're going to take some stuff home. And you have to get really good at releasing and letting go, right? As a speaker, or anybody that's dealing with emotions and other people's emotions, you got really good at keeping the work at work and home at home, and not bringing the emotions from somebody else to your house or your kids and everything else. So I try to go sit in the dark. And every time I tell people to sit in the dark, they freak out because everybody is scared of the dark. Notoriously, everybody's scared of the dark. And I tell them, I say, you're not scared of the dark. Darkness is the absence of light. You're scared of being separated from the light. The light is the truth. So you're actually afraid because there's lies in that darkness that you need to face. When you close your eyes at night, bro, and hell is all unleashed on your brain, it's not your brain against you. It's your brain trying to say, hey, remember this person hurt you? You never forgave them. Remember this happened? You haven't moved on from that yet. You haven't healed from that. It's basically just reminding you that. But that's when we watch the Netflix series or take the melatonin gummy, go to bed, do whatever we can not to think about that, and that's compiling in the background. And since we're taking something, we're not going into REM sleep most of the time, so we're not processing it, not even in our sleep, bro. And we're just suppressing it. But if you go take a time out of your day, an hour, go sit in a dark room, no windows, no distractions, no phones, what you're going to see is all the things that you need to face. All those traumatic experiences, all those negative emotions. And that's when you need to take those thoughts and feelings captive, and you need to ask them, like capture captive, and ask them, why are you here? Where did you come from? And you start to get back to childhood experiences, and you'll realize that all the fears and phobias that you have now, all the anxiety that you have now, even if it came what you think out of a situation that happened a week ago, the only reason you reacted to it the way that you reacted to it a week ago is because of the situation that happened to you when you were a kid, and you learned that reaction. You see, so everything goes back to the root of a childhood experience. Everything, bro. If you go pull from the root, you won't have to keep clipping the leaves. You know what I'm saying? So that's where you figure that out, is in the darkness alone. There's those sleep deprivation tanks. Have you ever been in one of those?
No, I never. The saline ones where they put you're in the water.
You're in the water. You can't feel your body because it's the same temperature as the water.
Swim tank type of thing.
You ain't hear nothing? Yeah, dude. Go sit in one of those for an hour or two. You'll figure it out.
No, I never tried that. I think it's interesting what you talked about the things that pass along to people and how it can, like epigenetics, it can turn on different things. My girlfriend, she doesn't like onions, right? And we got 2 kids. So she's, all right, man, no, don't put onions on their stuff. I'm like, it's theirs. You don't like onions. Why are you trying to make them not like onions, right? So, everybody was my daughter, and, she pulled the onion off of a burger that I had. I said, oh, man, this is so good. And she's eating. She's like, oh, man, this is great. This is great. I said, you see what happens? You programmed her to say that it was negative. The same programming for me thought it was positive. She doesn't know. She only knows what her leaders are going to tell her to like and dislike. So let's not put our fears and pains on top of that. And I think that's happened to a lot of us. When I think back as a kid, those are the things that we, like you mentioned, as a child, you have these anchor memories of things that happened to you. And I'm like, dude, that happened when I was 7. I'm 36. Like, I'm holding on to this thing for 40 years. Like, somebody did something to me as a kid, and that person's dead now. But yet, the anchor memory is still there. But I'm like, they're dead. Like, I can't even go and say that to them. And I run to punch him in the head, right? No, I do it. But I don't have to, but I'm just saying, I'm kind of showing like, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because when I sit back and I reflect on it, it's like, oh, yeah, dude, like, that don't even matter. Like, it really does.
I was telling my wife today, we were walking, every morning we go on walks, and she was talking about her childhood. She's still dealing with some stuff, and she was asking how I dealt with mine, how I've been able to move through this stuff and then deal with other people's childhood. That's what I do all the time, is basically dealing with everybody's traumatic childhoods. And I was like, man, eventually you get to the point where you realize that the greatest part of life might be that inherently things are pretty meaningless and you get to choose what that meaning is. Like, that's a gift. It sounds bad when said that way. Some people always cringe when I say that, but it's great that life is kind of meaningless in a way, and you get to subscribe to a meaning that is meaningful to you. Because if there was this one set meaning that life had to mean this, then you would be a slave to that meaning. You wouldn't matter to you. You would have to believe in this, and if you don't believe in this, then you're going to always feel like the outcast. It's great that none of this really matters unless you give it a reason to matter. Other people's opinions, stuff like that. It's not that important, man.
As adults, we compartmentalize things as to when I was a child, when I was a teenager, when I was in college, things of that sort, as if those things stayed there. You know what I mean? Like, man, it's just like, well, if you get rid of those compartmentalizations, it forces you to say, well, let me go back and deal with it because I'm still Ron. I'm not Ron the 7-year-old. I'm not Ron the 14-year-old. I'm still Ron, right? So if I look at it from that perspective, it's a lot easier to go back and not use the excuse, oh, that happened to me when I was a kid. Yeah, but you're still dragging it around as an adult. So it happened to Ron, and Ron needs to deal with it. Versus Ron the kid, he's gone. Like, because we feel like because we moved on from that stage. Because here's the rebuttal. I'll tell you real quickly. Because I'm going through this. I'm like, dude, this is so incredible.
This is good. Yeah.
We always say like, oh man, that happened to you as a kid. Get over it. It's not like I was a different person.
That kid's still here.
It's like, so by putting those age ranges, we kind of compartmentalize it as if those things should stay there, but they don't, because the same person traveled through that stage, right?
Yep.
The same person traveled through that stage. So I'm like, oh man, I just need to remove all of these when I was a kid. No, this happened to me, right?
Yeah.
Not, because if you were bullied at 8, you're still dealing with it if you haven't gotten over it at 48 or whatever age you are, right?
Yeah. I meet a lot of adults that are still mentally in high school. And you can just tell by the way that they run their businesses, the way that they run their houses, like they're still trying to be cool kid on campus, and maybe because they weren't cool kid on campus or whatever it may be, and they're trying to relive that and recreate that the way that they wanted it to be. They never moved on from it, right? And there's still that hierarchy in high school mentality that they have to try to be at the top and the center and the popular and the this and the that. It's still a competition to them. And it's sad to see people stuck in that. But deep down, I don't look at that person like an adult. I look at that person where they're at mentally. I think that's how I look at everybody. Dude, I'm terrible at ages. I could not tell you how old you are. Anybody, nobody. I have a conversation with them, and I can tell you how old I feel they are based on how they had that conversation. People always think I'm in my mid-30s or something. It's like people always, because they're seeing just like, you've been through this, and this, and you got through this, and this. Like, you have to at least be this age. Age is really just a number, bro. It's all in your head. We made up age and time and everything, so.
So what I was thinking about was like, so many times, like going forward, as a business owner, I'm from East St. Louis. I'm from the hood, and we always say, oh man, you hustle. I'm a hustler. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And that's cool if I'm just working by myself, right? But when I got 30 employees, I can't be a hustler no more. I can't just be working hard enough to pay the bills. I got 30-some people's bills I got to pay every month.
You hustle to eat, and now you hustle to feed. Now it's like it's a different type of hustle. It's a different goal in mind.
100%. And I think that's kind of the same thing where we hold on to these identities, right? And that identity of the hustler, hard worker, it works to feed one person. It doesn't work to feed 30 of them, right? So you got to build the systems to do it. And I think a lot of speakers are good at sharing their message but they have to learn the speaking business.
Absolutely.
Right? So being able to share your message is totally different than being in the speaking business. So let's talk about some of that side of it, right? Um, how does a speaker, because you are like the king of youth speaking, in my opinion, colleges, high schools, middle schools, things of that sort. You may do some other corporate stuff, but I don't know that part. So you can enlighten us on that. But how do you go about getting booked for those stages?
Right. So first of all, I appreciate that. The king of the youth speaking. I'll take that title. It's branding, right? So I remember years ago I was getting some corporate gigs, speaking at some like mortgage loan companies, Liberty Mutual, like speaking at some places. I was like, I want to put that on my website. And one of my mentor friends was like, nah, man, like you're killing the youth industry. When people come to your page, they need to know you for this one thing. And at the time, I was like, man, come on, really? But I always listen. I'm the most coachable person you'll find. Dude, if somebody more successful than me tells me this is the way to go, I'll drop everything I'm doing and do what they're doing. They have the results. They have the evidence. So I just didn't do it. And it's great because it worked out for me. Now it's become my branding, this culture shift tour, youth, education, all that. And so stay in your lane. This is the first message there for sure. You need to be known for one specific thing, and you need to make that thing 10x work 10x before you even think about doing anything else. Because a lot of speakers are creatives, meaning they're going to get bored when something works. As soon as something works, they think, okay, I fixed that. I figured that out. Let me go on to the next problem and figure that out. No, you need to 10x that and get every little drop out of that before you even think about switching, right? And so that's my number one advice, because the first thing is, since you're creative, you're probably not very organized, okay? And I've coached hundreds of speakers at this point, so I can tell you that most speakers that are creative, that love to write, they like poetry, they like to write speeches, they like to express themselves, they are not organized. They're the opposite. They're up late every single night. They don't wake up at the same time in the morning. They want to write a new speech for every single school that they go to. They do not practice anything. They're all over the place. They're creatives. That's just their personality. So they need a system or a person or both, a team, people that have a system to do the business side. Some of them I really look at, Ron, and I'm just like, you need a team because you're not a business person. And that might be something like, you also have to accept who you are. Like sometimes. Try as hard as you can to become this person, but if you change into that person and be a business person and you hate yourself now because it's not who you are, you're causing cognitive dissonance. You're living in a lie. You're going to have the imposter syndrome. So some of these speakers, I'm like, dude, you're a great speaker and you're so creative. You need a manager. You're one that actually needs a system and a manager to run this business side because you are just not a business guy. You know, I was raised by business people. So, my grandparents raised me very old school. And they're very relationship, business, do what you say you're going to do, very disciplined. And so like business, when somebody showed me a system, I can run the system.
Gotcha.
I know a lot of friends that cannot. And so, yeah, dude, getting yourself a system, getting yourself someone who's kind of the opposite of you to be organized when you're disorganized. And that allows you to be who you want to be. That allows you to be free on the creative side of things. Everything needs balance, man. That's why we have the left. That's why we have the right. And it swings right and it swings left. But in the middle, we find balance, right? It's the same thing with business, man. Me and my partner, Joey, I was telling you about Joey. Joey's the analytical number guy, and I'm this guy, Luckily, I can still talk his language, and he can still talk mine a little bit, and we overlap, and we learn from each other to build balance and grow. But I'm creative. He's analytical. We work well together. I tell all the speakers, y'all need a Joey. And if you don't have a Joey, you need a system. You know you need both. You need both. It's a beautiful blend of both is what it is. But do not think that you can run a speaking business without knowing anything about business.
No, that makes sense. So how do you go about getting booked?
So for me personally, outreach, man. I was thinking about making a shirt the other day that said that. In every way possible. We call it the 4x4. It's just you're reaching out to people that you know on a one-on-one basis. So every morning I go on a walk and I'm texting people that I know, people that I've met at schools, people that I've met at convocations, people that I've met in my phone. Every time I meet somebody, I put their name, I put where they're from, and I put their occupation in their title. So I can go on my phone at any time and say counselor, event coordinator. I could put that title and all these people come up and I just follow up with these people. Reaching out to people you know one-on-one, that's one way. Reaching out one-to-many, that's ads, that's cold email, whatever it may be. You need to at least be ripping 100 cold emails a day. There's certain ways that you do that with the system where you don't get flagged and you got your DNS records right, and it's a whole thing, right? Every channel is a whole thing that you have to master. But reaching out one-to-one, one-to-many to people that you know, people that you don't know, using social media, hitting those DMs, engaging with people, commenting on people's stuff. I mean, that's a full-time job within itself as well. So social media, that's another one. And then run paid ads, actually running ads. And I like to promote videos that are organic, videos that are already doing well. And I post every single day. So that way I have data to know what messages work. And if a message works over and over again, then I know I need to expand on that message and go deeper. And I could make other clips about this same topic because that is what resonates with my audience. The more data I have, the more I see what's working, and whatever works, I 10x it until I got every single drop out of that. And then I think about moving on. So personally, for me, social media works very well. I'm the social media guy. I may not get hundreds of thousands of plays on every video. One video here and there might get 1 million or two. One video gets 200, 300. But you would be amazed at the 200, 300 videos that actually got me booked gigs for thousands. And it's really just because that message resonated with my audience, and I repeated that message over and over and over again. Your audience doesn't even really need to have new information all the time. They just need to be reminded of your mission. And that's where so many speakers go wrong. They think because they've already talked about patience that they can't talk about patience again, as an example. And so they think that social media is so hard because they have to come up with all this content all the time and all these new messages, and they have to reword it. They've already said it like that before. It's like, no, you have no idea how many people just follow you because you're a good reminder to stay patient. And it's like if you're in a relationship, or you want to be in a relationship with a girl, say, example, this girl's dating this guy, but you like the girl and you just want to let her know that you're available. She's not available right now, so she's not interested in you. That's your client. Most of them, it's just not a good time to book you. It doesn't mean no. It's delayed, not denied, right? And so you just have to keep sending out that message to let them know that, hey, this is what I do. I'm available. You're ever available. And then when she breaks up with that guy, who do you think she's going to think about first? You, the guy that was always there with the message that related to her in the first place, right? But if you fall off the face of the earth, bro, she's not going to think about you. She's going to think you moved on. And so that's what I try to tell my clients. It's like, man, 100 outreaches a week is not enough. I think it's 1,000 to 1 ratio, man. I'll cold email 1,000 people, maybe get 10 book discovery calls, and from those 10 calls, I might book 1 paid speaking gig. That's 1,000 to 1. So if you're doing 100 a week, it's going to take you 10 weeks to get 1 gig, and you quit on week 8. You see what I'm saying? So I hate to say it this way, but it is still a numbers game because business is numbers and consistency. And creatives hate to hear that, Ron, because we care. We care, so we can't number people. And that's something that you have to get past in your head because you don't want to number these people. You don't want to let anybody say no to you. You don't want to feel that rejection because you haven't healed from your past yet. And rejection hurt then and it hurts now, and you haven't dealt with it then and you're not dealing with it now. So you get upset and you lose people that they were just not ready right now. They already spent their budget. They don't have a budget. Like, some people take that so personal, dude. I'll get on calls with speakers that it's so personal that they legit quit. Like, they're contemplating quitting because they got 5 no's this week. I mean, I got 5 no's this morning. You got what I'm saying? I'll look up 15 no's in my inbox. You know, it's something that you got to get thick skin, but not deal with in a way that you're suppressing that, but you're dealing with it in a way where it's just like, that wasn't for me right now. That's it. That's all that means. I'm moving on to the next person, because if you don't, then you never get to that person that actually needed what you have. So every time I get to a yes, I look back at the last 15 no's and I'm like, thank God I kept pushing on, because this yes right here, how important is this yes in this person right here? And so that's what I do it for. I'm always outcome driven when I'm selling too. I'm always selling what we call the vacation, selling the destination. We're talking about being there, what it's like to have a culture shift in your community. We talk about all the wins that we've already had. We're not talking about the little details of the program that is basically work for them to do, because they're going to be thinking, oh my gosh, that's a lot to do. It's a lot to do, but we're not going to talk about that yet. We're going to talk about what happens when we're done. I need you to see this destination before we talk about how we get to the destination. A lot of speakers, bro, they get on these calls and they start to talk about all the features of their product or their service, all the logistics, all the work and the input, and they scare people away. These people that they're talking to are so busy, bro. They're like, I don't want to do anything that's going to replace what we've already done. Like, I got to start over. Forget that.
Well,
It's a psychological thing. Most people don't really want to be successful. They just want to not look like failures. So when you get on a call and you start talking about how amazing your thing is and how it works and all these little things that you got to do to replace what they're already doing, just know to them that just sounds like you're calling me a failure. So you're saying basically whatever I'm doing right now isn't working or what you have is better, right? And so that makes me feel some type of way, deep down. I'm not gonna.
No, you hit it right on the head. I did it.
First, I'm gonna feel like, all right, this guy thinks he's the you know what, and he don't even know what we're doing. So I tell speakers, get on there, bro, and ask a bunch of questions. You really need to get to know the person first. You have to be a great listener, so that way you can be a great learner, so that way you can actually serve people what they want to be served. It's like a waiter coming over the table, not listening to your order and just bringing whatever he wants. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you got to listen to the details so I can cook this steak exactly how you want it to be cooked. And so I tell people all the time, not a professional speaker, I'm a professional listener. I'm really good at listening. I got really good at listening because I was a shy kid. Shy kids, we just get good at listening. We sit in the back of class and we listen. And we learned a lot. And we learned how people work. And that's what you need to do on these calls. You ask a bunch of questions, and then you give them the desired outcome. You're a visionary at that point, someone that sees beyond the current circumstances. So they're going to tell you a bunch of problems. That's what they're going to tell you when you ask a bunch of questions. They're going to bring a bunch of pain. And at the moment of the highest pain is when you sell. That's when you pitch, right? And in the moment of highest satisfaction is when you ask for a testimonial. Just a side note there. But the moment of the highest pain is when you need to paint the picture of the destination. So you teach them how to be a visionary. They start to see beyond their current circumstances. And once they can see it, they can what? They believe it. And that's all that sales is. It's just transferring my belief to you. Once I get you to believe in what I believe in, the way I believe in it, we're sold, dude. You're good. You need to close in. Don't say anything else. Just go ahead and 3-point pitch close. If you had X, Y, and Z, would this give you the desired outcome that you want? Yes. Let's do it. And then at that point, what I find, Ron, is that that table switches. So all of a sudden, they're not defensive anymore. All of a sudden, they're on your team trying to figure out how they can afford you. You can always sense it in that moment in the call when it happens, too. You can sense it. It's like, we really want this. We just need to figure out how to afford it. And so now me and them are on a team. All right, let's start calling nonprofits. You make me a list, I'll call them. Let's raise the funds together. And that's how we build these big movements. And we actually have funds to create it. And since we have funds, it actually works, man, because we're not working on a shoestring budget, So we get to actually do amazing things that change the community. And then as soon as we go and we deliver it, moment of highest satisfaction, film a testimonial. Nobody cares about your written testimonials in this business, I feel like. I mean, if you can film it, man. You need to feel the emotion. We're an emotion relationship business, dude. I don't like the Google reviews. A couple words, great, dude. But if you go to my website on testimonials, you're going to see 20 plus videos with B-roll, with the person there in tears. Like, you're going to see the emotional effect that this tour has on an organization. And that's where I think you got it. You repeat that?
Well, dude, I think that so many gems. Like, if you didn't get anything out, go back 15 minutes and just listen to that last 15 minutes on how to sell, right? Because I always think about, like, people always say this cliche, people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? And a lot of trustworthy people that are likable are just unknown, right? they've never done enough outreaches. See, in order for you to tell me no, you got to know who I am first. Right?
I'm saying, bro, you can't tell me no if you don't know me. That's my saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, I got to reach out to enough people to get rejected first, like so that they at least know who I am, because it is a not now. I really appreciate you hopping on to share this. I know we were supposed to be talking about the movement, but once we covered that, we went into epigenetics and how it really basically comes down to this. This is what I took from this hour. The speaker has to work on himself before he can work on someone else. And your message resonates more when it's authentic and it's built on truth, not built on theory and things you really haven't lived. And that gives other people the freedom to be able to open up and have oxygen in their lives to share their truth and to be more authentic. Is there anything that we're missing as we close in the last couple seconds?
The last thing, once you've got to the point where you are healed and you're doing the work yourself and you feel like you have a solid foundation of truth to build on, proof over promise when you're selling people. Just go out there and do some stuff for free. You don't even charge people if you haven't done it before. They're giving you enough. Like, they're giving you their time. They're taking a risk on their job to book you. That's something I really want speakers to understand. Like, people are risking their job. You might say something crazy that could get them fired. You understand? They don't know you. So proof over promise. Go out there for free, gather some proof, get some testimonials. The guy who promises the world is not going to sell as much as the guy that has 100 testimonials.
Good. I appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us for the summit. Real quick, are you an introvert or extrovert?
I'm an introvert at heart, bro. I really am. It's hard to tell, but I am.
No, I can tell you, you're doing God's work, man. I mean, we need more people that care about the youth, that's willing to step in, to go the extra mile, to get the training you need, so that you're not leaving people in that valley of despair. When you talk about your story, you're not awakening something and you can't get them out. I think that your expertise and your training is really important, and it should be an example to other speakers to do the work not only on themselves internally, but doing the external work also, to make the phone calls, to get in front of the right people that can actually book them. If you really believe in your mission, in your mission and your message, then you'll do what's necessary to get it out there. If it's just about the money, you're already lost, because you're gonna lose to the people that have the mission, because people want to support those missions and messages. So
that's how they can test it, bro. Look, if you're scared to get on a phone call, then you really need to ask yourself what's bringing the uncertainty that brings the fear. You actually don't believe in what you're selling. Because if you knew you had the cure, the answer, bro, you'd be waking up every day, couldn't wait to get on the phone.
Exactly. 100%. No, dude, home run. So tell people about LeadHive in our last few seconds.
Yeah, for sure. So LeadHive is a software that helps speakers generate, qualify, and outreach to people on autopilot. So the qualified part, basically, you get to set the parameters. Whatever your ideal client is, you set those parameters. It finds those people online, on social media, all the platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all of that. And it will outreach to them, like their posts, start a message, start a conversation with them. And then basically you can come in there and be your own setter, set them on a calendar call, and do the stuff that we talked about today. Practice these calls. If you're doing 15 or 20 of those outreaches a day, Monday through Friday, you're doing 100 outreaches a week on social media. You start doing cold email too. You start calling people. You start getting your reps in, A lot of speakers just need practice, man. They need more reps. So you need reps of getting people. How do I get someone on a calendar call? How do I go from this point of cold to warm? How do I get to this process? The only way you're going to figure that out is if you do it every single day. And it doesn't matter what stage you're at in the game. I've been to over 1,000 different schools. I'm still walking every single morning, answering messages. It's a business. It's a lifestyle. This is what we do, So yeah, that's what LeadHive is, just a tool to help you stay organized and do that consistently.
No, that's a big deal, dude. Hopefully, I want to see you help a lot of people. People need to hear what you're doing. They need to follow your model. I mean, I don't know if you work with a lot of speakers, but hey, if you guys are picking up what he's putting down, you need to follow him and check out what he's doing. I believe in what he's doing. Our conversations have always been respectful, and I've always felt that when I looked, I'm like, okay, he's doing legitimate work. It's not just one of these guys that say, I may do this. And then I had a bunch of friends that knew you, and they were like, yeah, he's legit. I think you and I would get along. So glad we're able to connect, man. Thank you for the time and coming on the summit.
Dude, anytime. Anytime.
Perfect.
Appreciate you.